You can see how they thought that, right? The idea of a meek Messiah, leading a meek people. That's ridiculous. Here comes our Messiah. He's meek. That's ridiculous, folks. This isn't going to fly. And you could take them back to the Old Testament, and you could give them these scriptures from the Old Testament. For instance, there's this Isaiah passage that you know so well. It's literally, he is despised and rejected by men. He is a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, with our faces from him. He was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. How does that fit into a military might? How does that fit into a Messiah who's going to conquer Rome and set up a throne and do what needs to be done and protect us and make us the people we ought to be? This is meekness. It doesn't fit. Listen to the one in Psalms where the Messiah is proposed to cry out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me and from the words of my groaning?" What? See, this doesn't fit. A meek Messiah leading a meek people. I don't think I'll volunteer. See, it doesn't come together, does it? They had awful problems with it. There was a period of time in Jewish theology that they decided there was two Messiahs because they saw these two pictures in the scriptures. This military, we got to have a conquering Messiah. Come on, we just got to have a conquering military, conquering Messiah. We just got to. And yeah, okay, then we'll have this other guy who will come along and he'll be a suffering, bleeding Messiah. So we'll latch on to two. That didn't last long, that theology. That kind of went away real quick. And so what they ended up doing is they ended up latching onto this conquering Messiah who's going to march in riding on a white steed and take care of things, and this whole suffering idea, we'll give it to the prophets. Let them do it. So they assigned all of these passages about the suffering to guys like Jeremiah, who wrote Lamentations, and guys that were, under the suffering, and the prophets that got beheaded, and all the stuff that happened to them. Yeah, that fits them, but not the Messiah. And they latched onto this conquering military Messiah. A meek Messiah. Now that was back there. Bring it into my day. I don't think I want that either. See, I'd like to have a Messiah who punishes all the people that don't like me. And what really makes this bad, think this through. What really makes this bad, if I have a Messiah who's this powerful God of mine who's going to control my life, and I'm going to bow at his feet and come under submission to him, probably he's going to want me to be like him. I'm not into quiet. I'm into loud. I'm not into gentle. See, I don't know what to do with this. But here it is. You got to get the sequence. So let's start with that. I'm going to try to walk through this. And dear Jesus, Speak to me. The sequence, we keep coming back to this, and I have no idea, folks, what we're going to do when we get to the 8th beatitude. Oh, brother. Because, see, they're all built, so far anyway, one is built on the other. And you got to get the sequence, or you can't just leap into meekness and get a hold of that without walking through where he's come from. See, he starts out with, blessed are the poor in spirit. And of course, we discovered that the poor in spirit is the absolute helpless one. It's the destitute one. It's the Greek word that literally means no funds at all. It's the begging poor one. It's the Greek word that has to do with crouching in embarrassment. He's crouching. He's got his hand over his face to kind of camouflage who he is so you won't recognize him. And he's extending his hands and he's begging because he has absolutely no funds at all. It's begging poor. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Do you see how ridiculous that is? The whack on the back. Why are you poor in your spirit? Not materialism, but poor in your spirit. Why don't you have any strength? Why don't you have any ability? Why are you totally, absolutely helpless at the core of your living? He made you that way. So this is not because of sin. This is not because you've been bad. This is not because you blew it big time, although you have. But that's not why you're this. The reason you're this poor in spirit is because God designed you that way. And we've been describing it in terms of the glove. The glove is not bad. The glove is not evil. The glove is totally, absolutely helpless. Because of its design, it was made that way so that the hand could literally be injected within it and the strength could come from other than itself. In other words, you were built by God for this intimacy. You were built by God for this oneness. You were built by God so that in your helplessness, you could literally be embraced by the wonder of his strength. You were built to be dependent, not independent. Sin entered in because we would not live in dependency. And every sin is defined not in terms of deed. Oh, we talk about this all the time. Not in terms of deed done. A sin is not distinguished in the activity. It's distinguished in the source of the activity. And when it spills out of me and the fact that I will not be dependent and I source it myself, the best thing in my life sourced out of myself is sin. For I must embrace my helplessness. Now in verse 4, he moves us to the mourning. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And we discovered that the mourning idea, again, very strong word. The mourning idea is this attitude that looks at its helplessness and says, oh, oh, oh. It looks at how we've blown it and sourced ourselves and says, oh, oh. It begins to mourn. It's this grief thing. It's not just an emotion, although it is an emotion, but it's an internal attitude, an atmosphere that opens you up to say, oh, I am helpless. I admit it. And in the admitting of that, I open myself up to that which is to be my resource. Why is that so hard? Why is it so hard to admit, I can't? He can. I'm going to let him. Why is it so hard to say, I'm not adequate? You and I have proved it dozens of times. Why is it so hard to, yes, okay. So mourning is the attitude that literally opens itself up and says, oh, I will respond. I will embrace. Oh, yes. It's what causes you to seek, what causes you to yearn, what causes you to be open to. Now, when you take the poor in spirit, the absolute helplessness, and you take the mourning, the responsiveness, the openness, the okay, the yes, I'm open, I'm available, I admit it, that kind of attitude, and you put those two together and put Jesus in the middle of it, oh, friend, then you come to this meekness, because the meekness becomes the very result of the expression of the divine nature that now comes to embrace you. Well, I'm going to strive to be meek. Then you never will. Well, I'll attempt to be meek. Then you won't be. Well, it's my goal. I'm going after it. You're going after the wrong thing. Meekness is a byproduct. Meekness just kind of happens. You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to struggle over it. This is not, we're having Saturday seminars on how to be meek, how to lower your eyes at the right time when you introduce to someone, how to kind of bow your head and look. We're not into, no, this is not activities of meekness. This is an internal nature that comes out of the helplessness that realizes in its mourning a response to Jesus that experiences the infilling of the strength, and in that embrace between you and him, this meekness begins to take place. It's a byproduct of the very nature of Jesus himself within you. So when you're meek, we say, oh, you've got Jesus. When you're not meek, we say, oh, you're faking it. You haven't embraced your helplessness. You haven't experienced the mourning. Because if you embrace your helplessness and experience the mourning, then this nature thing, this very essence of the nature and person of Jesus will begin to devour you, infiltrate you, saturate you. And this will be yours. So you see, no wonder he comes in verse 5 and whacks you on the back and says, woo, congratulations. You're meek. You meek people, you. Congratulations. Isn't that neat? Now, let's go back. I've already kind of blown that, but let's go back to the source. See, it's really important to note that the source of this whole thing is Jesus. Let's go back through the sequence. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Where did that come from? Him. See, again, I don't know why is this new to you? All these years in the church, I didn't realize that I was made poor in spirit. I never equated that with my creation. But that's got to be. Jesus made me poor in spirit. So the source of my helplessness is him. And he doesn't do anything bad, folks. He does everything good. So I've been created helpless. So that is a good thing. Well, how do I recognize my helpless? He is the only one who can bring me to the place in my state of pride and arrogance where I can begin to recognize my helplessness. So not only does he make my helplessness, he reveals my helplessness. So if I ever come to the place where I say, I am helpless, it's going to be because Jesus sourced that thing in my life. See, I'm so helpless, I can't even know I'm helpless. I'm helpless to know I'm helpless. See, we've said dozens of times, I'm so bad I can't even repent right. This is not, well, I'll just come and repent. I'm so bad I can't even recognize my need. I can't even adequately repent. I'm so bad I can't even surrender. I know I should surrender, but I can't surrender. What's wrong with me? I'm helpless. I'm in an awful condition. He made me that way. He intended it. It's okay. Praise God for helplessness. Because it's in the helplessness that I can respond. And the mourning begins to take place. So if the mourning is the result of recognizing my helplessness, who caused me to recognize my helplessness and gave me my helplessness? It's him. So where does the mourning come from? Him. Oh, thank God for sourcing mourning too. So not only is my helplessness sourced by God, and not only is the recognition of my helplessness sourced by God, but the very attitude that allows me to accept him and embrace him comes from God. Well, what's my part in this? You're not going to like it. You don't have one. Just respond to what he's doing. Well, that's a part. Okay, if you want to claim that, help yourself. But just respond to what he's doing. He's created you this way. He's revealed this to you. And now you're recognizing it. And in the recognition of it, which was sourced by him, you're responding to him. So he is present. Oh, you know the old songs. I love him because he first loved me. Well, how did I love him? He loved me. So even my love for him, I didn't source it. He sourced it by loving me. And in embracing me with his love, it enabled me to begin to grasp and understand. So all the way through this, what have you got? You've got, he is sourcing this. Then when you thunder into the meekness, oh, forevermore. There's nothing going on in meekness but him, because meekness is absolutely impossible. You cannot stay out of arrogance and pride and haughtiness and self-centeredness unless he sources meekness within you. In fact, to show you how bad this is, if you ever get to meekness and experience it in your life and you source it by yourself, you will immediately be proud of it, which destroys what you just got in meekness. So unless he sources this, there's absolutely no meekness to take place. It has to be an absolute sourcing of God in your life. I love these phrases. God helps those who help themselves. What are you talking about? Well, God helps those who help themselves. What are you talking about? Well, God expects us to do what we can do, then he takes over. What? How do you? You're helpless. You're helpless. So if God is waiting on you to pull anything off, it's never going to get done, then he's never going to do anything, so we're all damned. The only chance we've got is for God to intervene, and God helps those who help themselves, because I never can help myself, because every time I've helped myself, I've shot myself in the foot. I tried to help my marriage. Well, let's not go there. You know where that went. My wife tried to talk to her. My wife tried to help me. You know where that went? She finally had to say, I quit. Jesus, you work on him. And brother, did he. Woo! Please, let my wife work on me, will ya? See, there's no chance, folks. We're dead in the water on this thing. God helps those who help themselves. Whoa, strike that one off of your list. Don't ever say that again. And every time you do, wash your mouth out with soap. Because that is absolutely... I do my part. God does his part. What are you talking about? Well, I do my part. Yeah. Well, what is your part? Well, I don't know, and I've never got it done, but I do my part. Well, see, you're helpless, man. You're helpless. See, why is that so hard for us? Why is it so hard? Galatians is full of this. Oh, absolutely full of this. And you need to study that book on your own. But it's this whole Jesus plus thing. See, this whole group of people came along and said, oh, I know what the deal is. It's Jesus. He's fine. He's probably about 75, 80, maybe even 85, 90%. But there's this 10% that's us. And we'll do this, and we'll do this, and we'll do this. And they had these rules, and this legalism was born out of this. See, it's Jesus plus legalism. Yes, Jesus will save you, but you got to come to church, you got to read your Bible, you got to. Why is it so? Why do we get scared to say, no, it's just Jesus, and you don't have to, and you don't have to, and you don't have to, and you don't have to? What? You mean you don't have to come to church? Don't say that, preacher. Nobody will ever come. Oh, you mean we only come to church because we have to? So that's why you sit around and act sleepy during the service, because you really don't want to be here. Wow, wouldn't it be something to have a whole church full of people who say, whoa, I want to come. But we were afraid you weren't come, so we made it a rule. Therefore, it's Jesus plus coming to church that saves you. Well, which church? our church. Well, do you realize all the people that live in Missouri are damned because they can't come to our church? Well, I'm talking about our denomination. Do you realize our denomination didn't start till the early 1900s? You realize all the people before 1900 were damned? Oh. Isn't this ridiculous? See, though, I do my part. What are you talking about? See, this is helplessness. See, this is so Bible, isn't it? In fact, in this Galatians thing, he comes up to the end of his book, Jesus Plus, and he says, you guys want to add all this stuff. Jesus is fine. He's about 85%, but then you got all this plus stuff. And then he comes up and says, well, let's look at this. Let's look at the self-sourcing, which he calls the flesh. Your part, let's look at that. Let's look at what that produces, and let's look at what the fullness of the Spirit produces. And he begins to parallel the fruits of the flesh, the self-sourcing, your part, and the fruits of the flesh are awful. And then he thunders into saying, if you were helpless, absolutely helpless, and you begin to mourn and say, I'm responding, I can't, you can, and you let God begin to do something in your life, and he filled you with his nature and something began to happen in you that was not you, what would that look like? And he says, guess what? Galatians 5:22-23. The fruit of the Spirit is joy, is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, which is meekness. Self-control. Which one of those don't you want? Wow. Phenomenal. All produced by the Spirit. Now, that's kind of an introduction. Let's get down to really what we want to talk about. Meekness, the subject. What are we really talking about? It's interesting that when you get into the word meekness and even into the Greek, it again means a quiet and gentle spirit. But in the Old English, it was the word gentleman, gentleman. Of course, that doesn't fit anymore. But that was the original meaning. The gentleman was the kind, gentle spirit, individual, never put you down, no sense of superiority, no arrogance. He was a meek individual. I want to give you 3 ideas. Number 1, I want to give you the idea of the focus of this word. The focus is Jesus. The focus of this word is Jesus. Well, meekness is how I treat you. No. Meekness is how you relate to each. No. Meekness is my attitude towards those who are less than I am. No. Meekness is between you and God. Well, won't that affect my fellow man? Absolutely. But it's not the focus. It's a byproduct. So meekness, at its foundation, at its very heart, at its very core, the focus of it is on this idea of God. It's an inward grace. I don't know what that means to you. It's an inward grace of the soul. In other words, it's how you are feeling and it's beyond a feeling, but it's how you are relating to God himself. It's not an emotion necessarily or a feeling, but it's an atmosphere, it's a perspective, an inward tone of how you relate to what God is doing in your life, even through the circumstances around you. This is really important. Let me go over it again. Meekness, then, is always focused towards God. And it has to do with an attitude about how you are relating to and accepting and experiencing everything he's doing, even through circumstances in your life. In other words, the circumstances of your life, if you're like I am, are way beyond your control. What are you going to do tomorrow? I have no idea. What's the date timer said? It's blank. I'm not doing anything. But the day will be full. Why? Because stuff will happen. Stuff will happen. Well, don't let it happen. I can't stop it. Well, turn the stinking phone off. They'll come over. See, that ain't going to work. See, stuff is going to happen. My circumstances are out of control. I do not control my circumstances. Well, good night. Who's in control of my circumstances? Could I come to the place, get this. Could I come to the place where I have this overwhelming meekness in my inner spirit, which is relating to God, and I have such confidence in Him and such absolute faith in Him, and I'm so dependent upon Him, and I'm so helpless in all of this, and I'm just mourning before Him, and I'm just open and receiving, and He's flowing His nature in me, and Lord, I trust You more than I trust myself, and I believe that You made me and You have a plan and You are the hand inside my glove, and that the very circumstances that are out of my control are literally under Your control. And that's going to be all right. You got a plan, don't you? I have no idea what it is, but I'm helpless. But He has a plan. And it's okay. Come on. You really believe this? Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good. For good. For good. For good. For good. Sounds good any way you say it, doesn't it? For good to those who love God and are called, and those who are called according to His purpose. So there's absolutely no circumstance that can ever come into my life but what it had to go through Him first, and He is working it to my good and in the good of my perspective and relationships. So here is a God that I can absolutely have this internal trust in You. Now, if that was true, then the circumstances wouldn't upset you. They wouldn't bother you. Why? Because you're relaxed. It's all okay. How do you know? Not really, which is not me, it's Him, because He's the hand in my meekness. Meekness is that attitude. I'm helpless. He made me this way. He has a plan. It's okay. Everything's going to work together for good. Whew. Wouldn't it be something if it wasn't just something that sounded good, if it really was the truth? You could take fewer pills. It would be better on your nerves. Anxiety would be less. Wouldn't it be great? Meekness. Secondly, let's look at not just the focus. We're trying to get at what the word means. So there's a focus of the word. Secondly, let me take you to the foundation of the word. The foundational idea of meekness is not wimpy. If it were, think of how meek I am. It was a joke, folks. You're saying, nah. I mean, scrawny, come on. This is not about physical fitness. This is about spiritual state. So do not equate meekness with weakness. Meekness is literally, oh, get this, literally power under control. The Greeks who used this word used it for a horse that's been broken. So it's this powerful steed, this stallion, who's literally been brought under this significant control. So this is not about weakness, wimpiness. The greatest example of this is Jesus. Think of it. All that power. I can see the Israelites. Jesus comes along, man, he zaps people, he raises the dead, he heals them. Whoa, he takes bread and just stretches it, and fish and just stretches it and feeds all these people. And you look at that and say, good night. Oh, we got it made. I mean, such power, such ability. There's nothing that can stop us. In fact, before he ascends, after he was raised from the dead, before his ascension, the disciple says, whoa, we thought you were something before you died, but now that you're dead and raised from the dead, whoa, nothing can stop us. Think of the power of this thing. Jesus, are you going to get all your power together now? And are you going to do this thing? Are you going to restore glory to Israel? Are you going to pull this off like we dreamed you would? Is you going to do it now? You got all this resurrected from the dead power stuff. He had that. If you would take one with all of this power roaring through his being and this ability in the palm of his hand and listen to him, what does he say? Stuff like Matthew 11:29, I am gentle, which is meek, and lowly in heart. What did he say in the Sermon on the Mount? I tell you not to resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. See, you can understand that coming from a wimp. You can understand that coming from a namby-pamby. You can understand that coming from a guy who's afraid of his own shadow. You can understand that. But a guy who can zap the dead and he raises from the dead, come on. And he comes and says, hey, when they hit you here, let them hit you here. What? Meekness. It gets worse. Anyone who wants to sue you. Now, don't go talking about anyone who, I did this, he said this. Whoever wants to sue you and take away your tunic, let him have your coat also. Well, they'll just walk all over you. Well, I'm not going to. I know, you don't have to. Well, I got the power to. I know you do. Well, I'll just put them in there. You could. But don't say you're meek. Well, I gave them a piece of my mind. Fine. Don't do it too often, you won't have any. But you're not meek. You're not meek. You know what else he said? Whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him whoever asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, do not turn away. Oh, no! I'm not going to loan you my. This is awful. This is awful. The demons trembled at the voice of Jesus. Nature came under his control, and he's the one that's saying this stuff. So this is not about wimpy. This is not about meekness. It's an attitude that relates itself to God. And in relating to God and seeing, oh, you made me helpless. I'm mourning. You've come and filled me. Your nature now has given me this attitude that you have, Jesus. And this attitude is looking towards you, saying, you have a plan. And every circumstance in my life is somehow going to contribute to this plan. And yet as you are so great, you can use anything to glorify yourself in my life. So I can afford to turn the other cheek. I can afford it. And I don't have to exert my power. I can be meek. Quickly, one more. The fringe, the benefit of this, the outspill of this. Peace. See, this is an attitude that focuses towards God. Understand that. And that attitude and that atmosphere is one that is absolutely dependent upon Him and sees every circumstance as that which is in His plan and going to contribute to my life. And when you have that kind of relaxation and security within, then you begin to spill peace into your relationships. Your inner soul is not moved by every little insult that comes your way. Isn't that neat? Do you understand? When your life is always upset because somebody is doing something that you don't like, that they control your life? Your life is always in a... We used to do the children's time, you know. And one of the children's stories we did it every year, would be to the tater sermon. We had all these potatoes. There's dictator. You know, he has to have his own way. He's the dad. There's imitator. That's the mom. She's just does what everybody else does. There's spectator. That's the boy. Spec. Yeah, he just hangs around and says, oh, no, I'll just watch. Spectator. The daughter is the agitator. The agitator. The agitator. Because it's just, you know, that thing that's in the middle of the old-time washing machines. It just went like this all the time, just like this. The minute she gets into a group, she just walks in the door. Every time you're near her, she's just stirring things. Why? Because she's stirred up inside too. Oh, but Grandma. Oh, Grandma. She's sweet tater. Why? She's different inside. She's different. She's sweet tater. When you are controlled by every little insult that comes your way, we can measure your spiritual life by what upsets you. Now, don't misunderstand. The meek person, well, he never gets upset. We're not talking about somebody who never gets upset. This is about you never get mad. You can't be mad. No, get mad. Get angry. I invite you to get really hot about some stuff. But it's getting mad at the right thing at the right time. And normally what makes me mad 100 years from now won't matter. Meekness. And if you say this morning, oh, I want that, give me $50. You can't buy this. You can't earn this. You can't develop this. You can't practice this. You can't grow into this. How are you going to get this? Oh, I'm helpless. I know. I see it, so I'm mourning. I'm embarrassed at my own helplessness and the fact that I've tried to source my own life and do my own thing. And I'm so embarrassed about, oh, there's Jesus. He's revealed this to me. He made me this way. He's revealed it to me. I am all open and responding to Him. That's mourning. And He comes and infiltrates my life with His nature. And His nature is one of meekness. Got to have you, Jesus, like this in my life. Every area that you've not penetrated, break down the walls. Go to the core of my system. Revamp, rebuild, restructure, infiltrate, smash down every wall. Jesus, deliver me. Deliver me in the name of Jesus. Deliver me from myself and all my little upsets and all my things, all the little stuff that bothers me and all the picky of this and picky of that. God, deliver me. Bring peace to my inner heart. Could I come to the place where all the circumstances of my life, I see them as a direct result of the moving of your hand. Even if they appear to be bad, I can trust you in the middle of those circumstances because you are working all things together for my good. And this is not just preacher talk. This is your heart for me. And you and I have become so one, and you have so infiltrated my life, and I am the glove and you're the hand, and we have gotten together on this thing, and you have a plan. Whoo! Heads are bowed. Teenager, you need this. You need a relationship with Jesus like this. All the stuff that upsets you, you'll get out of high school and it won't matter. Please, young person, give your heart to Christ. Admit your helplessness. See yourself as you are. Let Him reveal to you what's going on inside. All the stuff that bothers you and upsets you and nobody understands you and my parents this and my dad that and so this and over there and the school and the teacher and all and on and on and on and on it goes. Come on, man. You're not getting to the problem. The problem is in you. He's embracing you today. Young person, would you get out of your seat this morning and would you kneel at this altar? Admitting to yourself and to Jesus that you are helpless. And that the only chance you've got of change of attitude and change of mind and future life and to be the one that God has dreamed you could be is for Him to infiltrate you like a hand fills a glove, for Him to go to the depths of your heart. We're not against you, we're for you. This is a moment of His drawing of your heart. So, teenager, we're going to wait a moment while you come and kneel before Him in helplessness that He might flow to the depth of your life. Senior adult, by this time you should have learned this. You're helpless. The value and worth of your life can only be found in Him. Come on, adult. I challenge you to look at the things that upset you. The puny things that upset you. Why? If you were helpless, created by Him, and He has a plan, could you, in the middle of your circumstance, see the unfolding of His glory? Live in security. Live in meekness. Oh, I want to seek Him today. Would you join me in admitting helplessness? Helplessness. Moments of seeking. Be obedient.